how to go about choosing a car or a bike?
I think the first question you need to ask yourself is whether you want one. Whether you need one.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest question. If you buy a vehicle and then not use it, I think it's a pointless exercise.
What if you were offered to drive the best of cars and bikes on some of the most adventurous terrains across the world and you get paid for it? Dream job, right? But this job comes with a great responsibility. Girish Karkera, the editor-in-chief at carandbike.com, has been successfully fulfilling these responsibilities for the past more than 2.5 decades. Let's understand about his journey, automotives, and much more on this episode of Convorhythm. I think it's been what, 25 years you have been in this industry of auto journalism, and I don't remember when the auto journalism started so seriously in India. Was it around that time? Were you the first among the first few enthusiasts who got that opportunity?
Well, I would like to believe so. But I think automotive journalism per se didn't exist. As a student, I couldn't have aimed for it because
Right.
I never knew its existence. While we've seen a few TV shows here and there, and
Right.
you've seen in some international auto magazines, but something like that could exist in India was not really very obvious.
Right.
So, definitely can't say that I knew about it.
Right.
So in a way, yes, maybe I was among the first, but there were journalists, automotive journalists, even before that time. The first auto magazine in India may have started around, say, 1980s. I was in kindergarten, and there were people who were into journalism, but it was not a full-fledged sort of thing. It was very niche.
Right.
Also, mainly because the industry was pretty small. We had only a few Indian manufacturers who used to build in India, and
Yeah.
the car was something for the really ultra rich. It was
Correct.
not for everyone.
Yeah.
I think it's only from when the economy opened around the 90s is when the car companies started coming into India. And by the late mid 90s, we figured that there is an opportunity here
Right.
for media in the automotive space.
Correct.
And that is the time that is the time when automotive journalism started taking shape. But still,
yeah.
at that time, I wouldn't say I knew about it. I used to go and buy magazines a lot.
Huh. Car magazines. As
Car
such, yeah.
magazines,
Okay.
yes, only car magazines, nothing. So I had this used bookshop, used books, used to
Kind of a Raddiwala.
yes. Outside Villepale station, where I used to go every month religiously and pick up one of the auto magazines which would be available. The reason was that if you buy brand new, it's some $30 or $40, but if you go for a used one, it's 10
Yeah.
rupees.
Yeah.
So that was big saving for me.
Right.
And at that time, it didn't matter that it was not very topical. It's a month-old news, but that's fine.
Yeah.
For a guy like me, it was fine just looking at those and reading about it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you also had those cutouts of some magazines. You had a, if I remember it correctly, you had a car with which I think you had pasted on a compass box or at home
Yeah,
or somewhere, someplace.
Those things, though, I think every boy does it.
Yeah.
Or most boys do it.
I think it was the season where F1 was kind of at the peak at that point in time, because also cable TV had arrived.
Right.
And I remember I got into F1 watching only because of you.
Okay.
Because you would be talking about Barrichello and Michael Schumacher, and so it was interesting. Yeah.
Right. No, F1, I think, really hit off in 1990s in India.
Right.
My dad used to subscribe to the Sports Star.
Right.
And they used to always give a poster inside of some athlete.
Correct.
And I still recall the first poster that I ever put in my house. It was not my room. We were in a small house, but it was in the living room. Was of Ayrton Senna, the Formula 1 driver.
Senna. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
that was the first poster I ever put up on a wall. I don't really put posters on the wall, but that was one of the few that I did. And the passion was always there.
I had Rambo.
Rambo, yes. Suits your image. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was The passion was always there for cars and bikes, but I think I was there. As much as I would like to take credit for all this, that it was a planned career, I
Right.
wouldn't say so. I think it was a coming together of a lot of things, partly the universe working towards it.
Right.
But yes, you need to have the passion and the interest to start off with. I mean,
Right.
otherwise, I wouldn't go there.
Yeah.
Like even with automotive journalism, so I got an opportunity to be a journalist, which was again very different. It was very unthinkable of. I mean, I never thought I'd be a journalist.
Right.
Because nobody in my family has ever been in media, and nobody I didn't know any journalist. But it just happened that I responded to an ad and I got the job, which I was not expecting to get because there were a lot of trained people there at the interview. But I got it, and I was a journalist for 2 years with the newspaper.
Right.
And
This was for car or this was for something else?
it's for sports.
For sports
So
generally.
I started off with sports with Indian Express.
Right.
And but the passion for cars was always there, which is how I ended up in an auto magazine, and then this journey started in '99.
Right. So which was the first company which was an exclusively automotive
So
focused?
for me, it was Autocar India. It was just starting up at that time, and so around '99, I got an opportunity. It's actually a very bizarre story. I had sent my resume to another magazine, which was very popular at that time, called Auto India, because Autocar was not in India.
Right.
And I had sent my resume there, but I got a call from Autocar, and I didn't know Autocar was coming to India, and so I was very surprised. So I asked them, but I didn't apply there. And later on, I got to know what happened was few people from Auto India were leaving for Autocar,
Right.
and the guy who was taking some things in a carton, the peon came and dropped my resume in his box, and since his hands were full.
Wow.
Since his hands were full, he knew it was for Auto India, but he couldn't remove it. So since his hand was full, he was like, let it be.
What the hell?
And he just walked into the Autocar India office, and then they were going through this, and they were looking for people, and they said, oh, there is a resume there, let's call him. And that is how it
Fantastic.
happened.
So it's like, it almost sounds like a Hollywood movie where, the things get misplaced. But I think you got the right opportunity because of that. So Autocar India was
The first one.
for the
Yes.
first one.
So, yeah, that was the first one. And I was there for some time before I moved to Top Gear, BBC Top Gear,
Right.
which was always a very haloed brand.
Yeah.
And then I was there for a long time, more than a decade, almost a decade and a half. And I also sort of led the team there. I grew up the ranks, and I became the editor in 2009.
You once told me that there are two aspects of this. One is the automotive aspect and the other one is the journalism aspect. So how was journalism back then? I mean, say late 90s and early 2000 versus how it is now. I mean, how do you know the evolution? How can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Right, so it's not very different from, I would say, mainstream media or regular media. During when I started, there were very few journalists, very few auto journalists, because it was a very close-knit sort of a thing. Not many people knew about it. You needed expertise. There was not a lot of real estate in terms of where you can put your content, right? It was only print magazines mainly. I think the advent of internet and the World Wide Web sort of gave the opportunity for a lot of enthusiasts to show their skills in terms of writing and things like that. And that is how we've seen a spurt. We saw a spurt of websites that came. Some of them stayed, some of them didn't. That was the biggest jump. Website was something that even a lot of print magazines could also do.
Right.
Like when we started Top Gear, when I started in Top Gear, there was no website. When I was on Autocar, there was no website. It all started around early 2000s. And then the website became the mainstream, and print sort of took a step back. But now a lot of content is now out on social media, and that is the biggest place where you find a lot of content. Now the social media content is very different. I think for print it was pretty serious. With the internet, it became a bit more flexible. With social media now, it's like anyone can do whatever they want. It is good in a way that you get a very varied sort of content in on different things, not just auto. Any food or travel or whatever. I'm not sure if it's very responsible at times, because if you're putting something in print, you knew it's out there and you can't retract it. I think with the internet, that flexibility was there. You can just go and correct it. So
Right.
you may not know the right thing right now, but you put it out anyways, and then you retract it.
Yeah,
So
because I think that with the advent of social media, there is a lot of getting out there first.
yes,
I mean, it has always been with
yeah.
journalism and media, but with social media, it has become a more of oh, we did this first, exclusive, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, that is there. I think in auto, what and maybe some other fields also, what is happening is people want varied content. People want content that they can connect with. People like content where they feel like I'm right there. I think the hero worshipping is not there anymore. Like if you see a very senior guy and they're like, हाँ इसको तो सब पता है, you know, सुन लेते हैं. It's like hearing a professor.
Correct.
Versus a guy, like an everyday guy going and talking about a car at a dealership or by the
Right.
side of the road. They feel like, हाँ ये तो हमारे जैसा है. So they relate to it more easily, and people tend to watch, I think, that kind of content more right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it also gives you don't really need to put fantastic looking content anymore. If you can put content which people can align with, or they can relate
to.
with, I think that sort of works.
Yeah, so I think in that sense, it's become more of user-generated content rather than journalism-generated content.
Yes, I mean,
which is
even journalists are now behaving like users, and they're putting content like that.
Yeah,
But I'm not sure how much of it is usable content. Like if I would pick a auto magazine maybe 10-15 years ago, every bit of information was useful. Versus you scrolling for an hour on Instagram or Facebook, not every bit of information is useful.
Yeah.
Like I would know how to get wool out of a sheep. I mean, there's a video that just doesn't really matter to anyone.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
people just tend to see it, or put a horseshoe on a hoof. I mean, those are the sort of content that, why do you need to see it?
Right.
But you just tend to just end up seeing it and scrolling. So it's all not relevant content.
Correct.
Same with auto also. You see a lot of content which may not be absolutely relevant to you.
Right.
But you just end up watching it, and
Yeah.
increases its view. And sensational things, people like to watch.
Yeah.
Like a car meeting with an accident or falling somewhere, people want to watch.
Right.
You know,
Right.
that sort of thing.
I think also in terms of viewership or readership, I mean, we normally feel that cars and bikes, these such magazines or such websites are followed more by male population than the female population. Has that changed over a period of time? I mean,
If you look at the big picture, maybe not. I mean, still I would say it's a very male dominated or male consumed content. What I feel is that it's not like women don't want to buy cars. They want to buy cars, but the thing is that we want to buy cars. That's it. You will tell us which is a better car for us. We see, like in social media, now you see a lot of women content creators. Which in a way is good, because we didn't have many women journalists earlier,
Right.
but now you see them. But it is the same equation as in male content creators on auto. You don't know how many of them are serious. It is the same with male and female.
Right.
It's not like female creators are not serious. There are a
Right.
lot of serious ones also.
right.
So I think these are people who like, motoring and biking, and you see a lot of them now because of social media. It is just easier to find these people.
Right.
On a print or a website, it may not be that easy. But with social media, it is just very easy. Anyone can open their account and they can start doing it.
Right.
And the potential to grow as a content creator is there.
Is there, right?
So which is why they get involved.
Okay. So number of cars in the urban area is increasing at a rapid rate. How do you think that our infrastructure is developed enough to cope up to this ever increasing number?
we are developing infrastructure at a very fast pace, but that to result in a more organized sort of environment is difficult. I wouldn't say it can't be done, but it will depend on a lot of parameters, different things. Building infrastructure alone, I don't think will help. What we also need to do simultaneously at a much larger scale is also educating the motorists. Our population is so huge, and the concentration of people, especially in urban areas, or now even in say tier 2 or tier 3 cities, is growing massively.
Right.
A lot of people tend to stay in clusters, you're close by, so obviously space crunch will always be there. In such a situation, even if you have infra, people tend to lose patience, because they're just wasting time standing at one place.
Right.
Typically, I think it will be, I don't think it will be very populist, it won't be a very popular statement, but it would be right to say that we are not very organized as a race. So we don't plan things as to the minor detail, because we go with the flow. That is how we Indians are. We go with the flow.
Right.
वहाँ जाके देखेंगे क्या करना है. I think it is the same way when you're driving. You know that if you go to the left, you will have to come to the right, because that left lane doesn't go anywhere and you have to go right. But they will say वहाँ जाके देखते हैं क्या करना है, and there will be 10 people who will do that, and so those who are coming in the right lane, they will be stopped anyways, because there are people who've said कि अच्छा वहाँ जाके देखेंगे क्या करना है, and we'll get through. We've come to a point where we allow it also, because most of us tend to do that. So infra alone is not going to help India. I think we need to be educated better on road manners, even as a person, how we are. See, if someone is impatient, they're not just impatient on the road, they're impatient everywhere, right? If we are disciplined everywhere. You can't expect an indisciplined person to be suddenly disciplined when he's behind the wheel of a car or on the bike. He will be the same, she will be the same. And even while coming here, I'm waiting at a signal. Although it is red, there are people honking behind me, because I think they only see traffic signal as a suggestion. It's not a rule.
Right.
That red hai to rukna chahiye. It's like red hai na pan khali hai to jauya. That sort of thing. But I'm waiting. You see people, bikers, although it's a wide road, bikers getting onto the footpath and going ahead. So if you are indisciplined, you're indisciplined everywhere. And I think generally we are maybe a bit more indisciplined than we should be. If it's a large population, being organized and disciplined will definitely help, and it will help all of us. But that sort of maturity to come is a little tough. So building no amount of infra is going to help. And this has been seen not just in India, but anywhere. A lot of developing countries where they build big highways, but if people are not following the rules, then there is no point. You can keep building them. It's not going to help. So overall, educating the motorist, I think a lot of parents and a lot of schools can start pretty early on disciplining, emphasizing the importance of discipline to children, and value of someone else's life, value of someone else's, how you should be more careful about it, especially when you're driving or riding. I think those things should be inculcated, and if we're doing it on a more organized level, and which can only come through proper leadership, then maybe we can have maybe another few decades, we can probably have a better, safer roads.
It's going to be a slow progression though.
Yes.
But it's interesting because same people, when they go abroad and they rent a car, they kind of they don't leave the lane, and they are very, very, very disciplined. So I also think that it's a lot of jugaad, a system that we talk about in India, or chalta hai attitude kind of a thing, which is kind of
I think, see, the world over, fear of the law is important. Like a lot of people, like you mentioned, they do it because they know that if they break a signal, they will be fined. In India, you break a signal, you may be fined, you may not be fined, especially if you're in urban areas. Certain areas, there are cameras, you will be fined for sure. Other places, you won't be fined. Also, like we mentioned, lanes. From a motorist point of view, our lane markings are not that accurate. I mean, you follow a lane, you'll end into a dead end, or suddenly 3 lanes will become 2 lanes, or the lanes will disappear. So all those things happen. So they also feel like lane markings are not that important.
But are there any standards? Like, the lane should be marked in a particular way, or say maybe speed breakers, they should be of. Are there any specifications that are being mentioned while building the roads?
Obviously it is there.
Right.
But everyone since everyone is flexible,
Right.
they tend to do their own thing, and
Again, it's the attitude where.
yes. So like all speed breakers supposed to be a certain height and certain incline, and
Yeah.
so ideally you should be able to drive over or ride over a speed breaker at a certain speed.
Correct.
But most of the speed breakers here you can't do that because you'll end up damaging the car.
Yeah.
So those things are there.
Now we're talking about speed, but I can't help it. I have to ask you this question: what is the maximum speed that you have driven a car?
I think I'll say 300 kilometers per hour, but it was legally done on German Autobahn.
Ah, okay. Wow. How was the experience? I want to know more. I mean, which car? How did it happen?
So the thing is, with most of these high-end cars that go that fast, you don't really get that sense of speed. You could be doing 200 and you wouldn't even know. Versus a regular car where you're doing 60 but you feel like you're going 100. So I don't think I was scared. I wasn't scared of doing that speed. Also because there were people going faster than me on that road. So
Wow.
I was like, whatever.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter. But I wouldn't do it everywhere. I'm very clear about it. If I never go fast on a road I'm not sure of, or I'm not driven earlier. So I would especially in India, because everything is a little, you don't know where the road is ending and how it is there, how the surface is, or someone stopped on the road, or there is a pothole or whatever. So it's just too much of a risk to go fast. You can maintain a decent speed, but going fast, I don't know.
What car was it?
It was a Bentley.
Wow. And it was a sports Bentley, or it
Yes,
was a sports Bentley? And which year was this?
I think it was a decade back.
Wow. Autobahn at 300 kilometers per hour. I still remember, I think you just got the license, and I had a Premier Padmini, Fiat, I think. I had a Fiat at that point in time with the gears on the
Premier Padmini.
Premier Padmini, yeah. And so you were driving from our house to Gorai Beach, I think, right? So from there to this Autobahn, how many countries have you traveled for driving cars?
Honestly, I don't know. I've never kept a track of it. I've enjoyed traveling. I think I've traveled a lot of places in the last 2 decades and a half. I've lost count of the number of countries I've visited, but I've done a few passports. So I can tell you maybe this might be on my 4th passport.
You're on the fourth passport.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, and it's purely because the pages have run out.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That's amazing.
I mean, the first one would have expired first couple of.
Did you think when you were in school and college that you would travel so many countries and you would have 4 or 5 passports? And
Never.
Okay.
I wouldn't have done it. My first international trip was to Indonesia, and I was quite overwhelmed sitting in the flight, thinking, "Oh, I'm leaving my country and going somewhere else."
Oh.
But yeah, so.
What has been your longest journey till date?
Okay. Well, I was on the road for almost a month, but that was not the driving time. I drove from, with one of my previous officers, I drove from Delhi to Bangkok.
Wow.
By car. It was a Maruti Suzuki S-Cross, and we were actually shooting a show of a journey. So which is why, although the actual driving time, if you were to do it, like if you were to just drive, would have been much lesser, but since we were shooting, it went on for almost a month. So on a month,
Right.
I was on the road, on the beautiful trip, a very different terrains, very different country, very different cultures that you experienced in one go. Usually when you're in a car, you start from your start and you head to your destination, and that is where it ends.
Right.
In this case, we were stopping at a lot of places, so we could actually experience the culture. We could talk to people. We could see what kind of food they eat. So it was a great journey that took me through the northeast into Myanmar and then down to Thailand.
Right.
My first time in Myanmar, very different place. People are very simple, always smiling. I don't know if it is just for the tourists, but you could find a lot of smiling faces. A very simple country, very rustic as well.
The food.
Yes, so I wouldn't say I'm not much of a foodie, but I can probably eat everything, and I've eaten a lot of things which maybe I shouldn't have been eating, and also.
Oh, okay.
So even the food on the way, I mean, you could see that it's a tough country. A lot of these places, and they eat kind of things that we normally don't associate with. It could be insects or locusts, and
Wow.
I mean, there was one place where there was like we have tandoori chicken tongue at a lot of places. They had rats and bats and
God.
all those things. I was this close to trying it out, but then I was told that, listen, we are not sure how your body will take it, and we have to shoot ahead. So they said, it's better if you don't experiment right now.
Wow. Khao soi, did you try khao soi?
Not really. I've had khao soi only in India.
Interestingly, somebody told me that khao soi is also available in Surat, and the local name out there is khause. Khausa. Khausa, I think, yeah.
So I mean, so like I was in China. I remember in the early 2000, and the Indian contingent that we had gone with, we went to a restaurant and someone asked for chicken Manchurian, only to realize there's no such thing as chicken Manchurian. It's a very Indian Chinese sort of a thing.
Right.
Yeah. So but Chinese food definitely is very different to what we eat here. I mean, this is for our palate. We like a lot of masala and those kind of things. So it's made for our palate, but original food. So that is one thing, you can experiment with. But I think I'm more a fan of how they live. What is the sort of culture they follow. Those kind of things rather than just food, because I don't think I'm much of a foodie.
What about the driving skills? I mean, you would have come across different countries with different rules, regulations, speed limits, the terrain. How did you cope up with all those?
So the biggest challenge was only when you're driving on the right side of the road. Like we drive on the left side of the road.
Correct.
With a right-hand drive car. A lot of other countries, like in Europe, you are in a left-hand drive car and you're driving on the right side of the road. Right. The biggest challenge initially was as soon as you enter a roundabout, because your first instinct is to go left.
That's right. Yeah.
So that was the only cautious bit. But I think over a period of time, it is maybe, I don't know, it's not muscle memory, but it's sort of, you just get used to it. And once you know that you're on the other side, you're just more aware, and you tend to drive properly. In fact, the first time I drove alone, I was in Germany, and while I was a little bit apprehensive at the start of it, by the end of it, I was, by the little bit into the trip, I realized, this is no big deal. One is, traffic is always as planned. The map was working very well. So there was no problem at all. So I realized that I know where my destination is. As long as the map works, I'm fine.
Right.
And so it wasn't an issue at all. I mean, I sort of got used to it pretty quickly.
Okay.
The only thing is, you don't, like in India, you can stop anywhere, and if you like some scenery, you can stop and take some pictures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You can't do that in a lot of countries.
Yeah. You will probably have to have a drone so that.
So you have designated stopping places. A lot of times it's a bit too rigid, I think. But that is how they are. Most of the countries, like in Europe, most of the countries, it's more or less similar. You may not even realize you've changed the country and you come into some other country. It's almost like that.
That fluid.
It's almost like that, and the terrain is the same, the greenery is the same, and everything is the same. People almost look similar, in Europe, most of Europe. So it's not very different. You also realize there are some places which you thought were very different, but they're just like India, like Paris, like Paris. It's
there is a term for that. It's called as the Paris syndrome.
Okay.
So there is this all glamorous thing about Paris, and a lot of people apparently when they visit Paris and they realize that it's not as beautiful as they had expected,
Right.
and then they get disappointed. That's the Paris syndrome apparently. But,
So I'm
yeah.
talking more from a motoring point of view.
Yeah.
And you hear a lot of honking, people changing lanes randomly or going here and there. And you experience it in New York also at times. The honking, you experience it in
LA.
LA, not that much, I guess. I mean, at least when I was there, I didn't experience it. In Australia, if you go to Sydney, very similar. You find a lot of honking. You don't expect it, but it is there.
In terms of technology, why is it that always there is this innovation in automotive industry? First, it starts either in some European countries or the West, or in the Far East.
So I think it's an evolution process, right? In India, we started making manufacturing maybe a little bit later. It's only maybe around the end of the last century, that technology started coming into India. I think at this point of time, it may be not entirely correct to say that we are not pioneering technology. I think we have a lot of companies now in India which is doing that. And a lot of companies that are supplying to other international brands as well, new technology. I think it's a matter of time.
Right.
There are a lot of countries which have been doing it, say maybe for the last 100 years. Obviously, their scale is much higher.
Yeah.
Or a country like China that came out of nowhere and with the right sort of push from the government, they were able to do it. But I think not too far away, we will also get that. Maybe our scale may not be to that level, but I think we will have new technologies. We're already having new technologies coming from India, so it may not be entirely correct to say that right now. I think we have moved on. We have started the movement. I think as a customer, basically we may not be very different from a lot of other countries now. We want the best technology. Whatever is the most affordable possible, we want it at that price.
Right.
So if you go to see any new car launch, the models that are sold the most now are the higher variants, not the cheaper variants, because people want the latest and they're ready to spend. Because we have we are ready to spend our income on these things. Or it's not just cars, even for phones or a lot of technology, watches, gadgets, and things like that.
Yeah.
So even with cars, they're doing the same thing. They tend to go for the higher variants, or where everything is there. The number of variants that manufacturers make is different with different companies. The more variants you add, I think there is always a manufacturing stress as to how many variants you can do.
Right.
But there are some brands which are managing it. Like if you see the recent Tata Nexon, they have some 72 variants, and it's.
Is that an engineering change, or it's?
No, it could be just some features, not
okay.
just the engine or gearbox or something like that. Between each engine and gearbox, you also have different levels of features, so different packages and all. So they all of those. I mean, we've seen big numbers even earlier. There were used to be. The Innova probably had some 20-30 variants at one time. So I mean, these things keep happening. I think the marketing guys know how to price vehicles at different price points to get the maximum out of it.
Right.
And if the manufacturing can support it, because manufacturing more variants is a challenge, but if the manufacturing can support it, they'll make use of it.
Yeah, interesting, very interesting. With this advent of EV and artificial intelligence, IoTs, and all of that, what's your take on that? I mean, is EV truly sustainable, and what's your opinion on that?
See, nothing is truly sustainable. I mean, it could be petrol, diesel, or how you can make it very clean. It may not be sustainable. I think it's the same thing with electric vehicles, because there is a process of getting there, right? So you're manufacturing, you need raw materials, you need to set up a factory, so that process remains the same. The only difference between an ICE and an EV is that there are no tailpipe emissions. So if you're stuck in a jam where there are 500 vehicles, everyone's spewing smoke. With an EV, there may not be smoke. How sustainable it is in the long run depends to be seen. I think it's a matter of time. We will get new technologies. Maybe in another 40-50 years, EVs will become obsolete, and we'll get something else. Like we moved out from ICE. Suppose they realize that okay, EVs maybe not that sustainable. We need to think of something else. So these things will happen. My personal thing as an auto enthusiast, since we've grown on petrol and diesel cars and manual gearboxes, is that I feel that nowadays even a lot of petrol and diesel vehicles are cleaner. They're much cleaner than what they were, say, 10-15 years ago. And maybe there was opportunity to make them even more cleaner, which we've sort of stopped now, and we've gone all out again with EV because governments are pushing it, countries are pushing it, international bodies are pushing it, because global warming is a problem and we have to do something about it. Will this alone solve the problem? I don't think so, but this could help. For sure, this could help. I think that we should have allowed them to be, being together. There should be no monopoly.
Kind of hybrid situation.
Yes, so it should not be a monopoly. If it's not like if the oil companies ruled the world for the last 75 years because there was a monopoly, nothing else was allowed. Now the battery guys will rule the world for the next 50 years because nothing else is allowed. I think that sort of monopoly shouldn't have been there. I think it's a great time since EV has progressed so much. They can be at par with ICE, and if ICE engines get cleaner, I think there is an opportunity for both to coexist. According to me, that would be an ideal situation, but I think I might be a minority here.
Okay. I think at this point, I want to ask a very popular question. I mean, you must have encountered it every now and then. How to go about choosing a car or a bike?
Okay. I think the first question you need to ask yourself is whether you want one. Whether you need one.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest question. If you buy a vehicle and then not use it, I think it's a pointless exercise. So as a thumb rule, I say that, if your running is around, say, 10,000 kilometers a year, that's an ideal situation. You should definitely have your own vehicle. You should definitely have one. Apart from that, once you've decided that yes, you need one, the first thing that you should look at, of course, is the budget. What is the kind of budget that you can afford to get a car or a bike? Then you have to list down what your priorities would be in terms of what is the kind of usage that you would need. So if your usage is just maybe going from your house, say to your office, which may be 4-5 kilometers, congested area, and that is what you're going to predominantly use your car for. There's no point buying a 3-row SUV or an MUV. But it depends, like different people can, their needs are different. Some people like to show off, like I need a bigger car, or some people.
My neighbor has got a bigger car, so I have to, compete.
And some people look at it like a social status. It's a social status symbol. Some people use just one car everywhere, so they need the flexibility. I need to go to office, I need to go on my vacation, I need to go to the party in that one car. So I need a car that will sort of suit all the occasions well. So that sort of, it's for every person it is different. I always say this, a lot of people come and ask me like, which is the best car out there? For me, it's like going and asking a doctor which is the best medicine out there. I mean, there is no such thing, as a best medicine. It depends on what disease or what needs to be cured. And I think what is your need? That is where every person will have like an ideal car or an ideal bike that will suit their needs, will suit their pocket, will suit their image. And I think that is more important to understand. What may be good for me may not be good for you, and what may be ideal for you may not be good for me.
Right.
So I generally ask a few questions, like what are they using? It sort of gives me an idea as to what have they settled for in life, with the previous car. So that, the next car should feel like a progression.
Correct.
So those things are there.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, there is no sure shot one answer.
One answer to that. Okay.
Except for
so there is an approach that you got to take, and
yes, I think it depends. You have to look at it clinically, and you have to figure out which is the one that will suit you. Of course, more or less you get a thing about, okay, these cars are nice and these cars are not nice. So because no manufacturer will sit down and say, okay, let me make a bad car. Nobody's going to do that. So they make a car for a certain audience, and I mean, if you are that audience, that car is there for you.
Yeah.
And no need to buy a Thar because your neighbor has bought a Thar.
Yeah.
That's very
Or
stupid.
maybe a Jeep.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a very stupid thing to do. I think it's your hard-earned money. But whatever. I mean, I leave it to that person.
So another interesting, I think, question is that how does it feel when your relatives ask you for your advice on which car to buy, but end up buying something else?
Well, that happens. I think that happens, and it's only natural. Like, um, I think you can. I think that's a good thing. If you should always do what you think is right. You can ask 10 people, but do what you think is right. So I don't really. I never get upset about.
That's a very saintly reply.
No, I mean, I think it makes sense. I would do that. I mean, I may ask 5 people, but I may do what I think is right. And if I may give an advice to someone, okay, this car is perfect for you, but they go and buy something else, I think that's perfectly fine, because no one knows that person's requirement more than the person himself or herself. And I think that is very important. If you have the sort of logical and rational to deal with it, I think you should do it. But no harm getting advice, right? I mean, uh, if I'm a relative or a friend or whatever, someone, please just
Yeah.
go ahead and do it. I don't even charge for it, so why why not?
Absolutely. Terrific answer. I think I wanted to speak with you about also the other aspect, which is the journalism, and how does the editorial part of all these things work? I mean, there are target lines that you got to meet, and how is that chaos? I
Right.
mean, if you can describe that.
I'm happy you asked that question, because a lot of times people feel that it is all fun and games. Being an automotive journalist, you're driving exotic cars in a lot of exotic places, and that is what you do. But I would say that is just maybe 25% of our actual work. I think the whole point of being an automotive journalist is it's not just to drive the car, but also what is the outcome of it, and what is it that you're going to give to your reader or your audience. I think that is very important. The creation of the content from your drive is something that takes a lot of our time, and it is not fun and games. Like, we are shooting this video, and there's going to be a hell lot of work post this shoot.
Right.
It's probably more than the time and effort that has gone in this shoot.
Correct.
So it is something like that. So it's not a lot of fun and games. So
If you are writing some content about, say, a particular car, do you have to share that article with the company before, company in the sense the company, car company, before you're authorized to publish it, or you have the freedom to evaluate the car and write whatever you have evaluated it?
see, it's like any news magazine or any news article. There is no point writing a piece and giving it to the manufacturer for clearance. I think factually you can check a few things, like whether the facts mentioned about the car is right, or a bike is right or wrong. But there is we don't. I mean, we don't give the article to them. It is totally at the discretion of the editor, and I think that is how it should be. The first intent should be to be honest to your audience, not to the manufacturer, or not to someone who's giving you the car. Of course, we all have very cordial relationships, and sometimes you say things which may offend them. But the way I look at it, and this is my learning in the last 2.5 decades that I've been an automotive journalist, is if you're honest and if you're straightforward, the manufacturer appreciates it more. Contrary to what might be said, what might be felt. Yes, there may be some time of anger, or there'll be one person who will say, "Arey, kya likh diya ye?" Okay. But I think the company, as in general, respects you more, and I think that helps you in the long run,
Right.
because they will always treat you with respect if you don't toe their line, that way. So it's always better that way. And I don't think any manufacturer, I mean, they like honest feedback, and if you give them honest feedback, they will like it. of course, there will be some people who won't like it, but like if you look at the big picture, I think it's always better to be honest.
So the past decade has seen, a massive improvement in the road infrastructure and highways in India, and the number of accidents are also on the rise. So, what is your advice to these drivers who drive these vehicles on those highways? What would you advise them?
I mean, first thing is be patient. I think impatience is the one that causes the most accidents. Um, there is they say, that over speeding, kills. I mean, of course, you have to maintain a certain speed limit. But I say, you can drive dangerously even at 60, by not following lanes or, suddenly turning somewhere. And you could drive dangerously even at 20 kilometers per hour. Someone may be driving perfectly in control in 100 kilometers per hour. So it's not just about speeding, it's just down to some basic traffic rules that we need to follow. See, our highways, we've designed a lot of our highways, this is my understanding, is on the western sort of design. But their countries and their towns and their villages are very different. Ours are very different. Our highways pass through villages, through towns, and we need to understand what is it that we can do, because we can't put a German Autobahn design in India.
Right.
I mean, we can put it in some places, but we can't put it everywhere. So we need to figure out what would be the best solution for India in terms of highway design. It doesn't really need to be like an American highway or a European highway, narrow straight or whatever. But we need to figure out what, because the number of people around it is substantially higher. Like you won't find any houses next to a highway in Germany, right? They are all away. But that's not the case in India, right? We are going next to someone's house, and then we are expecting that person that you should never cross the highway. That is not right. So we need to figure out how we are going to do it. So that's one thing. And in terms of driving, also, we feel we are very impatient generally, because there are a lot of bottlenecks. We tend to keep things last minute. If we know that it will take us an hour to get there, we don't keep any buffer. We don't do that. And sometimes it is not in our hands, because you may know that you will reach in an hour, but suddenly there will be some bottleneck and you'll take 1.5 hours, and then you want to make up that time. So it's a culmination of a lot of things. Personally, you can be less impatient, right? You can ensure that you're not in a hurry when you have to reach somewhere, because you could be jeopardizing someone else's life and your own life. So accidents can be caused due to a lot of reasons. It may be driver error, it could be the road is not clearly marked, it could be someone decided that I need to quickly go to the other side. So, I mean, education is the key here, and disciplining is the key here, and also ensuring that those who do wrong things get punished, which is something which is a big, question mark always in India, and not just around motoring, for any criminal case also,
True.
People do wrong things and get away, that should not be the case.
Well said. Well, thank you so much, Girish, for spending your time here.
Thank you so much.
It feels great that somebody who has been in Autobahn has also been here with us. And we will meet once again sometime really soon.
Thank you.
On one of our future podcasts as well.
Definitely. Thank you for having me here, and it was nice talking to you. I mean, we talk to each other a lot, but and
this is too formal. I mean, I don't know why this is become so formal.
Thanks for having me, and all the best to Convorhythm. I'm hoping it does well.
Great.
Before we cut, who do you think among you is a better driver?
Me.
Me? I learned first.
Yeah, he learned first. That is true.
And
I became better. Yeah.